Awesome, man. Well, dude, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me, dude.
Yeah. How are you holding up actually now that the baseball season's been postponed?
It's weird, man. I tell you what, it's even not just baseball, but just normal life right now. It's weird. It's weird, wanting to go outside and even just looking outside and seeing nobody out there. And baseball is all about routine and schedule, man. And you have your game days and your time leading up to the game that exactly what you're going to be doing at what time. And right now, you don't know what to do right now.
Yeah. So that's actually a good, one of the things I wanted to ask you, like, what are you able to do right now? Like, are you just staying at home? Are you able to get to the stadium? Like,
so I'm in San Diego. I'm in San Diego now, but there's probably about 4 or 5 of us that they basically just gave us a key to the stadium, and they're like, "Hey, man, if you want to come do something, just do it on your own." And that's basically all we can do right now, which is tough for me, man, because I like, if I'm going to the batting cage, I want my hitting coach with me there, give me something to work on. If I'm going to the gym, I want my trainer there, give me a workout. It's a lot harder doing that stuff on my own, I think.
Yeah. I can only imagine. It's we were talking about this a little before we started, but it's just like unprecedented.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's the weirdest thing too, is like, we have no date. So we don't know when we're going to start right now. If it was like, all right, we're going to pick things up on, the 1st of June or whatnot, then that would be a lot easier. You got something to shoot towards, but it's just all unknown right now.
It's crazy. Yeah. And so is there still no direction then? You're just caught in limbo.
Nothing, man. Yeah. We're caught. We're stuck like the rest of the world right now. Just kind of waiting around.
Yeah. So you mentioned something right out of the gate. It's something I wanted to ask you about, but you mentioned like how important routine is. Mm-hmm. Like, do you have a routine kind of in all aspects of your approach to the game, like off season, in season, prior to the game? Like, is routine something that like is like critical for you? Do you feel like?
Yeah, it's huge. It's basically that's what it is. When you start up the off season workouts, it's you kind of the days before create that routine on what you want to get on and what you want to do, and ride with it from there. And that's probably the hardest thing about baseball too, honestly, is like your routine gets thrown off so much that 162 game grind, that's where the mental grind becomes more of, a physical grind when it comes to baseball. You'll have your nicks and knacks and your sorenesses everywhere, but like, you're playing a night game Wednesday and then flying into Texas at 5 a.m. for another night game. And, or you could be in the middle of a rain out and have a doubleheader and then one of those crazy late flights. And, the schedule throws so many curveballs at you that way that's kind of what makes it so tough, is that it throws your routine off all the time.
Dude, so that's something I've always wondered about, because one, you feel like they got to be able to do the schedule in a better way. But two, like I have a tough time going to like a sales meeting if I have to fly cross country and deal with like a late night flight. I couldn't imagine having to like go out and do something like so skill specific, you know what I mean? And like be asked to perform at a high level. Like, do you have any approach that you take in trying to kind of like cope with that? Or does the team give you any suggestions as to like what you can do to kind of like handle all the things that come from that crazy schedule?
I mean, like we were talking before, sleep is huge. If you can fit that sleep in at any time, I think that was one of the biggest things too. One of the doctors came in and talked to the team and, basically told us if you can get that amount of sleep at any time, it doesn't have to come at night. If you can nap for a quick hour or something before the game, then, that's huge. So I think that's one of the biggest things is really getting that sleep and making sure you're getting the right amount of sleep before. And then once you get to the stadium on one of those crazy days, you just got to kind of put your head down and try and treat it as normal as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Was routine always that important for you? Well, and like, let me ask you this, like in high school too, like what other sports did you play?
So I played football my 8th grade year. And then we had one of those, like my school was a private charter school. So you could play, JV in the 8th grade or something like that. So I played football my 8th grade year. And then after that, I was just solely baseball.
Oh, okay. So you kind of specialized like what? Freshman year then?
Yeah. So right around when I was a freshman, all the showcases and stuff in the summer, that's when all that stuff really started heating up. So it was basically like, if you want to, pursue this and pursue athletics and in college, you got to start, getting these showcases, getting these these tournaments down. So all that stuff came during football season. And, you know the grind of football season. It's that summer, man. You got to go to those summer workouts. If not, you're not playing on the team.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because it's like kind of controversial. So you started in high school, and clearly it's worked out pretty well. Like, what's your take on that for people who have kids who are going into high school? Because there's a lot of folks who say, like, look, to build like an all-around athlete, like it's better to expose them to a lot of different sports because they pick up different skills.
Right.
You know what I mean? That like translate across sports. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
That was, mine, my thoughts kind of coming up was I definitely tried to isolate myself and really just try and play baseball, and that's it. But my thoughts of that now is completely different. I think,
really
as a high school, even, up until that probably sophomore, junior year of high school, you should really do as much as you can, honestly, because those movements and the different, positions you really have to put your body in, explode from is, that can help you when you do pursue a baseball career, when you do pursue a football career. And not only that, but mentality is huge too. There's a lot of guys that, credit football to a mentality of where they get that, that extra drive during the games and stuff like that. So I'm completely against that now, man. I think play whatever you can. But now, obviously if you get to the junior year and, you got a quarterback on your hands that's got a lot in front of them, then I think it's definitely smart to kind of map that out and be a little cautious with that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I cut you off a little bit too, but on the topic of routine, is that something that is kind of you've developed that as you've gone through your professional career, or is that something that was kind of always important to you even when you were like an amateur athlete?
I definitely developed that in professional baseball and definitely minor leagues because, before I remember it used to always get me I used to be so weirded out by we would have to go to the batting cage before batting practice and then do batting practice and then the game. So I'm like, why am I going to go hit batting practice for batting practice? You know what I mean? Like, I don't get why we're doing all that. But that basically was the time, if you had anything mechanically that you wanted to work on, that was the time you had to do it then. And then batting practice was, all right, we're facing a lefty that throws a lot of sinkers. So, really try and stay inside the ball and work the other way. So that's going to be my swing in batting practice. So then that really just kind of led me to that step-by-step process and leading up to the game. And that's really where, that whole idea of routine started, because I took that hitting into, man, I need this for getting my body ready for the day or, my workouts or something. So I think that's where it really started.
Huh. And actually, that's really interesting too. On the topic of batting practice, is it the same now with the Padres? Like, is it where you go in and you're doing like technical changes to your swing, and then that pre-game batting practice is more like pitcher specific, game specific?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the hardest part about hitting in the big leagues, especially is, you're facing a guy one night that he's going to try and throw you nothing but breaking balls. And then you're facing the guy the next night that throws 100 miles an hour, and it's time to catch up to that. So it's like, all right, so the guy, it's crazy, man. Like you got machines in there in the batting cage that you can put on left-handed curveballs. And, for my routine today for batting practice, instead of going out in the field and hitting fastballs, I'm going to hit curveballs because that's who I'm going to face tonight. So that's kind of that hour and a half before game batting practice that you really want to take. And then the flips that I'm talking about before BP, that's like if you feel like anything mechanically is just off, that's when you go to like work on that stuff.
Yeah. And are you working with like not team issued, but the batting coach for the team, or outside of that, do you even have like a specialist that you work with?
Yeah, you do. During the season, you pretty much, this stuff's so fast during the season that you have your hitting coach. And that's the biggest thing that people don't realize also in the big leagues, that maybe even in professional ball at the high levels, a hitting coach is really more beneficial of just helping you create a game plan. Like, hey, this guy really leans to his sliders in big situations. So in a big situation, look for this more than, hey, when you're hitting, your hands are a little low. You bring your hands a little higher. So because everyone feels if you're at that level, if you're at the big leagues and mechanically, you know yourself better than anybody. So you can, if you're asking for another set of eyes to help you out with that stuff, then he's there. But a hitting coach in the big leagues is there more for the game planning and that type of stuff.
So it's more like strategy and game plan.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. That makes sense. And you mentioned the minors, so that's something I wanted to ask you about. So you went the minor league route, and you were the third overall pick, right?
Right.
So maybe it wasn't even a decision at all. But being a high schooler at that time, like, did you consider going to college at all?
Yeah, I definitely did.
Okay.
Scott Boras was representing me, and he was my advisor at the time because you're, due to the NCAA rules and all that, you can't call it an agent. So
Right.
he was my advisor, and he's known for guys out of the draft. And this is back before, the new CBA, because the draft rules are different nowadays. But he was known for sending his guys to college because he wanted to get, max value for his guys. And a lot of guys didn't get that in high school. So if he felt like you went to college for 2 or 3 years, came out, you can triple the value of your signing bonus. So,
right.
He was all about going to college and all that. And I think that reputation just kind of, helped me because I think the team really thought I was interested in going to college. And my negotiation came down to literally like the last 30 seconds, man. It's the deadline.
No way.
Yeah,
Really?
The draft was like June 6th, and then the deadline August 15th at midnight. And I agreed with literally 40 seconds left. It was one of the craziest nights of my life.
No kidding.
It was wild.
Where were you looking to go, if you don't mind sharing?
I was gonna go. I was signed to go to Arizona State. I wanted to go. I wanted to play professionally. I wanted nothing to do with school, man. I wasn't. I didn't enjoy school. I didn't enjoy schoolwork. I wanted to just go out and start playing baseball and be done with papers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I had to play off. I had to play it off the whole time. Like I really wanted to go to college, and I mean. They were telling me, if you go out at night or if you go to these, the school basketball game or a different baseball game, wear an Arizona State shirt, wear this, wear that. Like, it was a whole big thing.
That's crazy. And it's such a wild thing, too, because, as a 18 or maybe even 17-year-old kid, you're negotiating with, cutthroat businessmen.
Mm-hmm. And that's,
it's just so wild. And the amount of money that's on the table and, it's...
Oh, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. You really have no idea. And that was my biggest thing the whole time was listen, I hired Scott Boras, and, Scott's got a pretty good reputation at being a good agent. So I'm I'm just gonna trust him, and I hired him for a reason, and I tried my best to stick to that, and thank God I did.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What was I just gonna ask you? Oh, so okay. And today, right, you mentioned the CBA rules, and I'm going to mess this up, but isn't it now if you go to college, isn't it something it's not 1 year like the NBA, are you committing to is it 3 years?
Yeah, so you can either be 21 years old. So if you're a 21-year-old sophomore, somehow you can sign then. But if you sign to go to Division I college, you got to go 3 years at least before you can get drafted again.
God, that just seems like they're hamstringing kids.
It does. And now, I mean, the draft rules now are getting crazier and crazier. So, it's just, back then when I got drafted, which wasn't, it was, what was it, almost 10 plus years ago. But you can sign for whatever. You can get drafted in the 30th round and you can sign for $1 million. Now, in the top 10 rounds, the team has an asserted, budget, say Kansas City and San Diego only allowed $10 million in their first 10 picks. So you give your first round pick $7 million, you only got $3 million for the rest of those 9 rounds.
Really?
Yeah. So the rules have changed a lot to where, that's if you get drafted pretty high now, you might as well just sign and start it on,
Yeah. Oh man, that's such wild. And to think I look back at where my head was at 18. Yeah. I had no business making any life altering decision. You know what I mean? And so thinking that these guys got to decide between, all right, am I willing to stick it out for 3 years in college? Or do I just take the bet on myself and jump into the minors right now?
I know.
That's a lot of pressure to put on a young kid.
I had no idea what I was deciding. You know what I mean? You just gotta, you surround yourself by good people and hope for the best, I guess.
Yeah. I hear you. So what was the minors experience like? And how long did you have to stick in the minors before you were called up?
So I was in the minors for about 3 years before I got called up. And it's going to sound like a long, crazy road, but it really wasn't compared to a lot of other guys' track to the big leagues. I signed in 2008 and in August, like I was just telling you. After that, they sent me to Idaho Falls for about 2 weeks to finish out that season. And
Beautiful Idaho Falls.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Exactly. Yep. So there was about 3 weeks left in that season. So I went and finished that season off. And then you go to Instructional League and all that in Arizona. So then the following year, first full season, I went to Burlington, Iowa, and then ended the year in High A, which is Wilmington, Delaware. So that was 2009. That was my first full season. That was a rough start. I didn't really have a great year. I got promoted to High A, ended up having a good playoff for them, but had like an up and down season, didn't really do that good. And then 2010, they sent me back to High A to start out, and then I went to Double A, and I went off that year. That was really my breakout year in the minor leagues. I was pretty solid that year. I played on the USA team in the off season, and then went to the fall league that winter. So that was a crazy winter because basically the minor league season is 20 less games. It's 140 games, so 20 less games in the big leagues. So what they do is if they like you, after the season's over, they send you to another league to kind of get you ready for that full 162 game season. So you basically have like 2 months in every off season. So you're just on the go, boom, boom, like nonstop.
It's insane.
Yeah. So then after that 2010 year, I got invited to big league camp. So big league camp, I had a really good big league camp, really good spring. That was 2011. Went to AAA for the first month. I started off hot, man. I was hitting like literally like 400, like 410 or something like that the first month. And like I'm talking about like anything
Teddy
that
Williams
was coming
numbers.
Oh, dude, anything that was coming off my bat was a hit. Like I was getting some of the luckiest hits I've ever got. And
That's
then
awesome.
I was hitting the ball well at the same time. So it was just like everything was going my way. And then that's when I got called up in 2011. I got called up in May. So I was almost there for about 3 years. But I tell you what, man, the guys at AAA is the worst. Like I was only there for a month, and that couldn't have worked out any better because you're taking flights in AAA, and you have to.
Oh, really? Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
It's terrible, man. Like you can put me on a bus for 10 hours, and you drive through the night, and you're fine. You can sleep, whatever. But you go to AAA. And say you end, a day game, a travel day, you end at 2:00, you go back to the hotel room, and then you have to wait until the next morning. You take about a 3:30 bus to the airport, and then you got a 6 a.m. flight. You're connecting somewhere, you got a 2-hour layover, and then you're playing that night. So the guys you hear that grind in AAA for 5-6 years, that is a serious grind.
Oh, man.
It's brutal.
So what are they doing in terms of like skill development when you're in the minors? Like, do you have access every step of the way to like good coaching? And I'm not asking you to throw anyone under the bus, but like, is it really a good opportunity to like refine your game and you're getting access to like, you know what I mean? Top level coaches, or what's that like?
Yeah, you do. And a lot of that's luck, luck or draw, whatever organization you get drafted with. Because, a lot of the organizations are like, it's big leagues or nothing, and they don't really pay a lot of attention to the minor leagues. But when I came up with Kansas City, that was their whole goal and their whole plan was to rebuild throughout the minor leagues. So their main focus, my first couple of years in professional baseball was on the minor leagues. So, I mean, we were getting some of the best coaching. And I mean, those guys were there to develop us, and they did a great job of that. I mean, you go to the Yankees, and it's like, dude, if you're not big league ready, then we don't know what to do with you here. So you might not get the same amount of coaching, development, or just basically you might not get that. The organization's not taking that development as serious as we were back with Kansas City.
Yeah. That's crazy. So you were saying, and it's come up a couple of times now, just how wild the schedules are, how like sleep becomes such a, what are you doing from like a recovery standpoint in terms of like sleep now with like, the 162 game schedule?
So basically, I mean, you have those nights where most of the time you travel during day games and all that, but you'll have those random weeknights where you got to travel late, and, the team will the next day cancel batting practice or whatnot, and we'll have like a later day where we can kind of sleep in and all that stuff. But I mean, that's one of the biggest things I think that I've had to change in my career now is, I bring somebody with me on the road, a PT that comes and he'll kind of stretch me out or do some treatment on me late night, depending on where we're at and all that stuff. So that stuff has really done a big help. That's been a big help for me because, depending on whatever time we go to these stadiums or to these cities and get in, I have a guy that's in a hotel room waiting to do some work on me, and he helps me,
awesome.
you know, with recommendations with the dieting stuff and all that. So you definitely realize how much that stuff comes into play the older you get.
Yeah, and is that something that's becoming more common? Like guys have their own dedicated, like I guess a support staff might not be the right term for it, but someone like a PT that like is focused on keeping them healthy over the course of a season? Or is that something that it's like, you know, only a select number of guys are doing it?
Yeah, it's definitely something that's picked up a lot over the years. I feel like a lot of the basketball players started that up. They, you know, started doing the dieting stuff, the PTs on the road. They really started that whole route. And yeah, that's something that a lot of guys, you know, especially a lot of guys do it before their contract years or a couple years before their contract years, just because, you know, you realize it's a huge year and you want to like be 100% ready to go. But then a lot of guys after that they realize like, man, I need this all the time. So I think that was, for me, that was the biggest thing. I did it the year before my contract year. And then after that, I was like, man, I need this all the time. And that helped me a lot.
Well, and I mean, I got to imagine like, you know, to fly someone around the country, there's a substantial investment involved, but it's like the risk of you going out with an injury is probably like so much more expensive.
Oh, no question.
Right?
No question.
Yeah.
Man. And then on top of that, you know, you're trying to win a world championship. So if you're injured, you're missing a month, you're missing 2 months, you know, your team can't have that. You can't afford that.
Right. No, that makes sense. I was telling you a little bit before the show. I think it's going to be the one right before this one, but I was talking with a guy named Nick Littlehales, and he's like a sleep performance coach. Works with a lot of teams in the Premier League. Works with a lot of like European soccer players. And it was cool because what I enjoyed about his conversation, he's like, look, like everyone needs a good night's sleep. He's like, the stuff that I'm telling these guys to do, like it's stuff that you can easily implement at home.
Oh, yeah.
So like hearing you talk about how important sleep is, it's something that like for me has become like
it's
really important. Yeah, because in like, you know, I'm not taking flights cross country, but I am being woken up by like a 2-year-old. You know what I mean? So I'm like,
energy.
Yeah, I'm like constantly searching for ways to like sleep better, sleep longer, get more out of it.
Yeah, man. So I heard they said Tom Brady's guy would fly to the hotel before, like the week before they're staying there, to make sure the lighting in his room is just right, because they want him sleeping that much better. You know, it's crazy. Yeah,
and that's kind of what he was saying too. I think he was working with the British, I guess it'd be the English Olympic team. But yeah, like when they went down to Rio, he was down there like a month or two in advance, and he changed everything from like the shades, the mattresses, the temperatures, got in filters. Like
that's insane. I know. Yeah. So last year, when spring training ends every year, you usually go and you'll play like 2 exhibition games in a random city against a big league team, and then go to your home field and start it up. So last year we went and we played against the Mariners, and they actually left spring training 2 weeks early to go open up the season in Japan. So that was right, when Ichiro went back and retired and all that.
That's
stuff.
Right, yeah.
Obviously, it's a different situation, but they came back and we played them in those 2 exhibition games before. So these guys are coming back from Japan and like they're grinding through migraines. You just see these guys, they're all pale. They're like, man, we just came back, but we got a sleep coach and he's trying to get us back on a normal schedule. So like we got to fight through a couple hours. We can't sleep, you know, this time to this time. And we're playing these guys in a preseason game, and we're whooping these guys. We're destroying them. And like, you feel so bad for these guys, man. But it was amazing the stuff they had to do. I mean, it took them, 3-4 days to get back to a normal schedule.
I bet, man, that jet lag is no joke.
It's real.
So you being a first baseman, that feels like maybe the best position in baseball, because I feel like every time I turn on the TV, like you guys are just like chatting it up with someone. Like how like what are those conversations like mid-game? Like is it to the point now where you've just gotten to know a lot of these guys over the years, or you know what I mean? Like you just built relationships and it's like a quick catch up? Like what's that like?
It really is, man. When we get a new guy on a team via trade or sign somebody, like everybody doesn't know the guy, and I feel like I know the guy because he came to first base and we've talked over the years. But it's completely random conversations. It really is. It's just like, there was one of my coaches coming up in the minor leagues would always tell me, he's like, hey, get in there with the base runner, because a lot of these guys during the games, they don't remember the signs from the third base coach. So the first base coach would basically, hey, you're going to steal here. Hey, doing this. So he's like getting their conversation. And if you can hear what they're doing, like tell us what's going on, blah, blah, blah. So I just started doing that. And then all of a sudden it just became conversation after conversation. And then it's just like, and everyone's so pumped to be over there. You get a hit, you get on base, you're fired up. So you see me and everyone loves me now.
Dude, that's awesome. It's just like positive association.
Exactly.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Okay. So here's something I wanted to make sure I asked you. Okay. So you've won 4 Gold Gloves. You won a Silver Slugger award.
Yeah.
Clearly highly skilled, right?
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Do you how do you think about like acquiring skill? Like, is it something that like you've like developed a method over the years as being a pro? Is it something that like it just comes naturally and like you don't have to think about it? Like, because I feel like, actually you might even know this. Like, how many guys have actually won both awards? It can't be that many.
Yeah, I'm not sure, off the top of my head how many, but the biggest thing when Scott, when I first signed, my agent Boris told me that he's like, treat your defense just as important as your hitting, because so many people, all they care about is hitting, and that's it. He's like, but if you can play both sides of the field, when it comes down to your time to get a contract, they can't say anything against that. You're defending the field, you can hit, you can do everything. So really maintain that focus defensively and try and keep that going. So I always took that to heart. And, I always put in the work. I always, willing to do it and all that stuff. But I think the biggest thing that helped me out is my ability now to listen to everybody, take in all the information, but understand what helps me and what doesn't help me. So, you have so many coaches throughout the way, so many instructors and so many of this that, especially nowadays with the internet, everyone's got an opinion and everyone thinks, they know how to do things in a better way. So my thing was, and especially now, with all the analytics and that stuff, is be open to all that, but understand, what helps you, what you can use from that and what you can't use from that. So I think that's really what's helped me out a lot is taking in all the information, but really just kind of picking and choosing the information that I think helps me and I can really use.
Yeah. And would you say, were you naturally a better hitter than you were maybe like, I don't know, like scouted as someone who's like a great defensive first baseman, or was it always something that like you were highly skilled at both? And I imagine probably both, like you went 3rd overall, but like, did you feel like you were stronger at one than the other?
I definitely, hitting was definitely my main thing. And that's kind of what, we have a new coach now. His name's Bobby Dickerson. He's known around the league as being one of the best infield coaches there is, just on the stuff that he teaches, the technique and all that stuff. And that's what I would always tell him. What I tell him now is, hitting, I've always been taught everything, mechanics, this is what you do hitting wise, boom, boom, boom. And then defense, ground balls, I've always just gone out there and caught the ball and that's it. I've never been taught anything on how to catch a ground ball, but just go out and catch the ball.
Ridiculous.
Isn't it crazy? So like,
it is crazy. It's insane.
I know. So like now I'm 30 years old and I meet this guy, and this guy is taking me through all these different drills. We're doing all these different things as a team, individually, and we're working on all these different things that I've never even thought of. And like, now I'm like, okay, like this is some like legit instruction on the defensive side. So, and it's never really been like that. It was always hitting is everything, and defense is there. And then Scott told me that about taking it very serious. And then I got on with this guy, and now I've kind of developed that routine we're talking about on the defensive side too.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, and it's funny. Like, I work in tech and I do sales, but I've even found like. I now try and like implement routine in like all parts of my day. Like, you know what I mean? And like now being a dad, and I have a pretty long commute. Like I'm not traveling cross country, but like when I do go into the city, it's like 2 hours each way. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Like there's very few positive things about it. So like, I'm like, how can I use a routine to just like take some of the thought process out of this stuff? So and cool to hear that. Hopefully I'm on the right track.
Yeah. You definitely, you just start fighting for time. And I think that routine gets you some more time, and that's, it's just a fight for time.
Yeah. And so actually on that note, like in season, like what does your kind of like day-to-day look like? And I guess maybe day of a game and then like, day when maybe it's just like, maybe it's an off day or maybe there's practice.
Yeah. So night games, they're usually like 7:05. At home, you get there probably about 1:30. BP starts. So batting practice starts at 4:30 every day at home. And then basically there's like, that's the thing with baseball is like all the structure and all that stuff is completely individual. Like you have batting practice and then the game, but then like you'll have guys show up an hour before batting practice. You guys have, you'll have guys show up 3 hours before batting practice. So it's basically how much time you need to get your body right before BP and all that stuff. So like I'll get there at 1:30. I'll start a little workout. I'll kind of do my prep work on who we're facing that night to understand how he's going to come at me and kind of start all that stuff. And then on the road, everything's pushed back an hour. So I'll get there probably about 2:30 on the road.
Gotcha. And that's something I wanted to ask you too, because you've been, I guess, since 2008, so almost 12 years playing professionally. You've probably seen a lot of guys come and go.
Yeah.
Like in your opinion, like what separates the guys who I guess in the minors it could have been making it to the majors, but being now in the majors for so long, like do you see any trends and kind of like what separates those who make it and those who don't?
I mean, it definitely tests you mentally. I think, I've definitely seen my fair share of guys that had, the crazy amount of talent that can play the game, just as good as anybody, but just couldn't handle that 160 game grind or 162, you know what I mean? So I think the most impressive thing to me are the guys and the teammates that I've seen that really stick to that routine and don't break it. And like every single day, man, I watched Alex Gordon when I was in Kansas City. Didn't matter what time we got in that night. Didn't matter anything. I mean, he was, doing his same routine at every time throughout the day and really stuck to that the whole time. So I think that's one of the things that separates at this level is being able to have that routine, stick to it. And I think that's what kind of keeps you mentally sane as a baseball player.
No, that makes sense. It's funny, like in all the conversations that I've had so far, this idea of like consistency seems to kind of like be the common theme. It's like
no question, man.
It's like there's no quick fix. It's like, are you just willing to do the right things over and over and over like a long period of time?
Yeah. That's it, man. You see so many of the guys that come and like in spring training or the start of a new season, they're like, man, I'm going to do this and this, and I feel like that's going to work out for me. And 2 weeks into the season, it's just completely, it's lost. And it's just like battle mode from that point on. Yeah.
And so for you, is that something that you feel like you do well? Like your routine that you do have, it's something that like you're unwavering on, or how does that kind of work for you?
For me, it's almost like I always tell people, I'm like, if I could stick to my routine and I'm consistent with that I trust if I stick to that over 162 games, that my numbers and my stats are going to be where they should be. It's just a matter of me sticking to that routine and really trusting in that. And I feel like that's the key with everybody when it comes to baseball.
Yeah. Does that even include like diet for you at this point?
I think the more and more years you kind of go on, I think that's the expansion of the routine, really, man. You can really, especially days where you travel and you don't eat the best meal or something, you can definitely feel it the next day as far as, the sorenesses and the aches and pains and all that stuff. So that's something you definitely got to think about.
Yeah. It's funny. So I had a job. Let me think about this. So this was my freshman year of college. I broke my collarbone like the first game.
Oof.
I was returning a kickoff, just snapped my collarbone right in half. So in the Ivy League, you couldn't at that time. You can't technically redshirt, right? So what you have to do is you basically have to take a year off. You actually have to leave school, and then you can come back again as a freshman. So I did that.
Wow.
And I got hooked up with this job with the Sonics back when the Sonics were still in Seattle. And it was awesome. So my job was to work in the suites. And basically, if anyone needed food, if they needed help with their TV, I was like a concierge.
Yeah.
But what was awesome is I would go in before the games and we would like have an opportunity to eat like a meal with like the whole staff. And it was right down by the locker rooms. And I remember this was when Ray Allen was playing. And he's like famous for his pregame routine.
Right.
Like, I don't remember how many shots he was getting up, but it was something that even like other NBA players was like, it's too much. But like over the course of his career, like he, at least from what I've heard in like interviews, he was just unwavering, So it's interesting to hear like across sport, across discipline.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's kind of like a consistent truth.
That is one thing I'll say too, man, is there's no one way to do it. Everyone's built different. Everyone needs different things. Everyone needs different, preparation. They need more, guys need less. Like that is a big thing I feel like I've learned over the years too. It's like before, when you're younger, you see a guy is not maybe doing as much, you're wondering why. And
right.
I think now you realize how different everyone's situation is when it comes to that and what different people need as far as, like Ray Allen might need 100 shots to get ready and Curry might need, 40. It's just, you realize everyone needs something different.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to me to hear that like it's so left up to the individual.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the crazy thing for me in baseball. I feel like baseball's come a long way with this and it's gotten so much better. But I mean, when I'm drafted at 18 years old, going to Burlington, Iowa, like I'm telling you in Idaho Falls, like you're completely on your own. Like I'm not knowing, I'm sitting here like, what do I eat? I can order McDonald's every night. You don't have any guidance as far as any of that stuff. So that always blew my mind. You have kids that you're investing a lot of money in and you sending them off to these towns and like, you're really doing nothing as far as nutrition guidance and helping these guys out. So it's so on your own. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most people will probably find that a little bit mind blowing as well.
Definitely.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, so, I mean, baseball, and you and I, we caught up about this last time I saw you, but it feels like it's a game where there's just like a disproportionate amount of like failure involved.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like to be a great hitter, you're still going to like get out 7 out of 10 times. So, like from a mental, and you keep talking about the mental grind and maybe this is part of it, but how do you deal with that on like a day-to-day basis?
It's just, I mean, first and foremost, you got to understand what you're signing yourself up for before it even starts. So like you got to know going in, there's going to be a handful of games where you're going to be absolutely awful. There's going to be a lot of games where you're really good. And then, there's going to be games other than that. So I think understanding that before really helps, but it's just I've always explained baseball is kind of like a basketball game. Like you have your team that, you're kind of up and down. When you go on that run, you need to make the most of that run as you can. And then when the other team's on that run, you got to really just try and tread water and get out of it as quick as you can. So that's how, really the season goes individually. And as a team, you can go on a 30 for 100 and you're hitting, 300. It's a good streak, whatnot. Then all of a sudden you're 0 for 20 and you're wondering how you even hit a baseball again. So it's just like, I think you got to break up. You really just try and break up the season as much as you can. So like, I really just like to treat each series individually. We got a 3-game set against the Dodgers, and that's the sole focus are those 3 games, and not worry about what's coming or what's behind. And that's just the mental game you got to play with yourself, really. Yeah.
Do guys tap into? Because I was telling you before we started, I had the sports psychiatrist on like the second episode. Do any of the guys that work with coaches in that regard, or are they just kind of left to their own devices?
Yeah, I know a lot of agencies they offer that. They have a lot of the sports psychologist guys that
cool.
You can reach out and talk to whenever you want. And I think a lot of the guys, or a couple of the guys of teammates of mine that do. It's basically the same thing we talk about is routine, man. They just really created a routine with them and just kind of working on what the best routine for them is. I think that's, what they use those guys for the most.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's funny because like, I'm in sales, and I mean, I would say 80% of my job is rejection. My boss is probably going to be like, that number shouldn't be so high, but yeah, it's funny. Like I like that approach of like, look, just like, chop it up a little bit. You know what I mean? Focus on like smaller sections. And to your point, like routine, as long as like you're doing the right thing over time, like it should You know what I mean? The results should kind of like average out.
No doubt. Yeah. You gotta. If not, man, if you ride that roller coaster, it'll drive you crazy.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
The day to day and living and dying by each at bat and each day in business, whatever it is, man, that'll crush you, bro.
Yeah. And is that the mental part of the game where you see some of the guys who can't deal with the mental aspect? Is that the piece that's most difficult, or is it just like, you know, the length of the season, all the travel, all of those things? Like, which is it that guys seem to struggle with the most?
It is. It's all of that, because I think with experience, the biggest thing that's helped me with experience is, you know, I've gotten off to bad starts in seasons. I've gotten off to good starts. I've gotten off to, like, you know, okay starts. And even the bad starts that I've had, I was able to turn around and make those a good season. So I think as a baseball player, you know, if you get off to a bad month or even first 2 months, you realize how much time there is, and you realize how quickly you can turn that around. So I think with experience, you know, that helps so much. But as a young player, you're coming up, and, you know, I feel like my second year, I didn't have a good year after a first, you know, good, strong rookie season, because I got off to a bad start, and it's like middle of May and I'm hitting like 230, but, you know, decent power numbers, good enough numbers to make a great year, you know, easily. But I'm kind of freaking out. It's May, my batting average is 230, and I'm like, man, I got to figure out how to get this going, to where if that were to happen to me now, I feel like, you know, I'd realize, all right, you got 4 months, 5 months left, whatever it is. There's plenty of time to turn this thing around. And it's just it's definitely a sense of urgency, but the mental side of it, it's definitely much more laid back, and you realize how much time there is as far as, you know, the young guy coming up and feel like you got to do it now.
Yeah. Yeah. And on that note of like, baseball is just, I mean, I feel like one of the reasons people are so just like crazy about it is the statistics. Mm-hmm. Do you guys pay attention to those like advanced statistics and advanced data, or is that more for the fans?
Yeah. You guys definitely do. And it's changed a lot over the last couple of years. I mean, you know, batting average and home runs and RBIs were the meat and potatoes. That's what you were looking at when it came to the numbers and the stats. And it's gotten a lot more advanced. You know, now it's about the OPS, the on base, and the slugging, and guys know, because when it comes down to contract time and arbitration, you know, these are the numbers they're busting out on you. So guys are definitely more aware of that stuff now. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, if you know that like that's how you're being judged when it comes to your contract, it's like, all right, I better get this in line.
Exactly.
All right, one other big thing I want to make sure we touch on here is, you know, you've played in a World Series. So in addition to playing in the majors, right? I mean, you've played on the ultimate stage. Yeah. So, you know, I feel like there's very few situations in sport that have as much pressure on them as being at bat, you know, like in a crucial game, in a crucial inning. Like, how do you deal with high pressure situations?
For me, it's just getting settled in, and like that was the biggest thing too in the World Series. I was like, just hit a ball to me like early, give me a ball, and like let me catch it, let me throw it, and then I feel like after that I'm settled in, I'm comfortable, and I'm ready to go. And I'll never forget the first ground ball I got. I think it was in the second inning, and you know, it was just an easy underhand flip to the pitcher, and this thing felt like it exploded out of my hand, and it was like it felt like it was going to go in the third row in the seats, and I was like, all right. But after that, I was good. I was like, I'm good now. I'm settled in. So really, it's just kind of finding out a way to get settled in. And for me, that's always, you know, getting a play in early or just getting in some action early.
Yeah.
Whereas the football, I'm sure, you hear a lot of guys say I just need to get that one hit or get hit once, and then I'm like kind of locked into the game.
It's so fun. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I played in college, but even thinking back to high school, and when you're a teenager, I mean, you can be a mess in a lot of ways. But I remember my best friend was our running back. And usually we'd start off with a run and he would take the first hit. And I would still just kind of like be like looking for something to like bring me into the game. And I'd be like, yo, dude, how was it? He's like, it sucked. He's like, what do you want to know? He's like, what's the next play? I'm like, all right, I got to get one.
It wasn't good.
No, he's like, yeah, it sucked. These guys are huge. So it's funny. Yeah. And like, I think about that now, like, you know, whatever it is, like if I'm going into a big meeting or like, I mean, this podcasting thing is kind of new to me. So it's like, even at the start of it, I'm like, man, I got to find a way to like settle in and relax.
Definitely.
Because it's like doing something kind of outside your comfort zone.
Oh, no question, man. Once you settle in and relax, you're in that zone, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So for you, like, I mean, I guess what's your like favorite like moment over the course of your career?
I mean, definitely winning the World Series is incredible. I think what was so unique about that though was I don't think a lot of guys obviously don't win the World Series, but what we did, what was so unique about it was, I mean, there was like 5 or 6 of us on that team that all came up through the minor leagues together, like day one in the minor leagues. I was with Salvador Perez when he got demoted from low A back to rookie ball. So he went from Iowa back to Idaho Falls. And, you look at it now, this guy's won 5 Gold Gloves, 4 Silver Sluggers, and he was the MVP of the World Series. So, I'll never forget, like, he was sitting in his locker in the chair in Burlington, Iowa, and he was bummed because, he was getting sent down to rookie ball again. And then this guy's the MVP of the World Series. So, like, being able to experience that with guys that you started from the first day of, minor leagues to, man, if I even make it to the big leagues, I'll go crazy, or I couldn't even imagine. So to be able to do that with those guys was, I mean, that was incredible.
Yeah. It's one of those good, like, in this era of Moneyball, you know what I mean? To see something like built organically. That's got to be pretty special.
It was. It was really cool because, the Kansas City, they flew out everybody in the organization to all the games. So we saw all of our minor league coaches that we hadn't seen in years. We saw the managers and even just the support staff that was always there with us. They were all there watching the games, and we got to see everybody after. So it was just incredible. It was like a huge reunion of the past, 5-6 years. And when we were with the organization, all the people that helped us get to that point were all there. So it was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
so, and you just mentioned, I'm going to butcher his name. Was it Salvador?
Yeah, Salvador Perez.
So, okay. So he obviously faced like some adversity early on and then has gone on to have like a tremendous career. Like we talked about the role that like routine plays in, guys who break through and guys who stay relevant. Like in your opinion, and again, you can tell me to take a hike, but is there anything that you can kind of put your finger on that maybe works for you or that you see work for other guys that separates them from like the rest and becoming elite?
Yeah, I think, there's just certain guys, certain things just come so easy to them. And I think especially, when you talk about hitting or when you talk about anything really, when you break it down on film, there's always something that guys like to say, it's called feel versus real. And, if you're looking at a swing and you feel your hands going straight down to the ball, but the real of that is, really your hands like kind of turning like this instead of going down. So the guys to me that those adjustments come really easy to, and they have the ability to feel those adjustments and have it like come to you quick. Those are the guys that always just seem to succeed for me, because baseball is a game of adjustments. You're gonna feel something at one point in time throughout the season that can go for 2 weeks, and you got to figure out how to get out of that. And if you can just feel that adjustment and it comes naturally to you, then I think you're going to be locked in. I think the guys that struggle is, when that feel versus real comes, guys try and break down stuff on video, and it's really hard for them to make that adjustment. You see that a lot, and it just becomes a battle with themselves. And I think those are the guys that kind of get stuck behind during the season.
Yeah. And you're a pretty humble guy. Would you say that you fall into that camp? Like, does it come naturally for you in that regard? Like the making of adjustments?
With certain things it does. And then certain times it doesn't. A couple of years ago, I really tried to make an adjustment on pulling the ball and getting the ball in the air more. And that was tough because, you do one thing in a batting cage and a controlled environment. It's really easy. You're getting the ball, where it's coming. And then you go out and you try and work on that stuff in the game, and it doesn't really feel the same. So, I think I'm definitely aware of the stuff that I need to be aware of. And, those adjustments, they don't come too easy, but, they definitely come. But certain guys you see that can just make that adjustment on a fly, like, the Machados and the Trouts and the guys that dominate the league.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, last question, because we've been on this for a while. I'll let you get back to your quarantine, because I know you guys have some
we got
some
big
gardening
plans
to get to.
Yes, big plans.
All right, so we talked a lot about the mental grind. I mean, like, what do you guys do to like unwind over the course of the season and just like keep your sanity, especially when you don't always have the opportunity to like retreat back home? You know what I mean? Oftentimes it's like it's in a hotel in another city. And you mentioned like there's always something that like is a curveball, not to use a pun, but a curveball thrown your way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how are you guys trying to like mentally like unwind?
You know, I think the best way to do that, especially during the season, is with your teammates. And you know, I think a lot of us enjoy during the flights. You know, we play cards, and you know, I think that's really our time to unwind. I've always, you know, one of my coaches with the Royals, Dale Swain, would always tell me, you know, you have a 3-game series and you get there the first day of the series and, you know, you're preparing, you're doing all your video, you're doing all your stuff to prepare for that series. So once that series is done and you go to the next spot, you know, you have a 2-3 hour flight to whatever city. He's like, you know, use that time to unwind and really mentally just get all that stuff that, you know, we were just doing for 3 days. Just get that all off your shoulders and, you know, understand, you know, it's time to move on and all that. So that flight time with the guys and we play cards and all that stuff, I think is really that's the time for all of us to kind of decompress and, you know, understand that we're about to get into another crazy 3-game series, but that's that time where, you know, we can just unwind and kind of do whatever we want to do.
Yeah. And actually, now that you say that, like, that is so unique about baseball. Because, like, if I think about, like, let's take, like, the NFL. You know, if you're a defensive back and you're about to play the Patriots, like, you have most times, like, 7 days. You're prepping for one quarterback, right? Like, one set of tendencies. But with you guys, it's like a series of, like, you know, 3-game series where you might, I mean, how many different pitchers could you possibly face in a 3-game series?
Yeah, you can face, I mean, now with these bullpen days, you can face so many pitchers in a 3-game series.
Yeah. So, like, what does that preparation look like for you guys?
Well, that's why, like, kind of like what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
You know, baseball's so on the go, it's so on the fly that, you know, really, like, you don't have time to really work on your mechanics and your all that stuff during the season. Like, if you do, you have to get there really early and kind of fix that. Because once it's, you know, that 2-3 o'clock and it's go time on game day, there's really just no time for that. And that's where, you know, your coaches come in, like what we were talking about. Like, it's more beneficial for me to have a hitting coach that can tell me, hey, you know, you're facing this pitcher, he features this, this, and this, rather than, hey, I'm your hitting coach, get your hands a little higher. So that's probably gives you a better understanding of how those hitting coaches with that information can be way more helpful than kind of mechanical stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely, man. They come in big because there's guys, especially think about it, there's pitchers coming up from the minor leagues that you have no idea.
You have
who
no
it
data
is.
on.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, it almost seems like, too, that could be one of those cases of, like, too much information's a bad thing at some point.
Yeah, and that's to each its own, man. Everybody, you know, you have guys like JD Martinez that goes and writes it in a notebook every at bat. And then you have guys that don't even want any information. Like Lorenzo Cain, don't even tell me anything. I just want to go see the ball and hit the ball. So guys are different, man. Guys are definitely different.
Yeah, and I guess, like, you've already kind of said it a few times, but you just got to find what works for you.
No doubt.
Settle into that.
Yep, that's the name of the game.
Awesome. Well, Eric, man, I appreciate you taking the time. This has been super interesting for sure.
No doubt.
So obviously we're all waiting on bated breath to find out when the season's going to start. Yep. But if people want to follow you, where do you recommend that they do that?
Instagram, Hosmer305. So
okay.
Yeah, I'll keep everybody updated on this quarantine life and what we're doing, and we'll keep you guys updated on the garden, how that fills out.
and he responds to all messages, people. So feel free.
Yeah,
you know, just let him know your thoughts.
Just give me a couple days to respond, and I'll get there.
That's awesome, man. Well, dude, stay safe during the quarantine, and we're excited. Hopefully, I mean, they're gonna play this season, right? It's just a matter of when, not if.
Yeah,
right?
We're hoping. We're definitely staying ready. So when they say it's go time, we'll be ready.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Kenny. Appreciate you, bro.